Hello, hello, hello. Happy, marvelous Monday, beautiful people. I hope that you are well. Listen, I'm so excited that you are joining me today. Today is all about Q&A. I received a lot of questions, landlord and tenant related, and so I just wanted to take this moment, this space to have conversations surrounding the questions that have come in. I'm your host, Karissa. This is what I do each and every Monday. I bring information to help the entire rental community. So I'm answering questions for landlords. I'm answering questions for tenants as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Those of you who are watching live on Facebook, I see some of you are watching live on YouTube. I'm live on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. So today I'm answering questions. I received, like I said, I received a lot of emails that have come in pertaining to rental matters in the housing community. And so I'm going to tackle those questions today. And I do want to share that information that I share is not legal advice. Let me just put my disclaimer up. I do not share legal advice. Someone asks, well, Karissa, are you an attorney? Absolutely not. So the information I share is, however, the industry's best tips and practices. And so I would do my best to answer the questions to the best of my ability. If there is something that I am not able to answer online, I do welcome you to email me and I will definitely follow up with you to answer your questions. And so I'm going to tackle as many questions as possible the time that is allotted for us today with all the questions that have come in. And so again, thank you so much for tuning in. And I just want to ask that if the information, any questions that I answer today, if those questions are answered and they're helpful for you or someone that you know, please like, tag, and share. Like, tag, and share. I want to make sure that I get this information out to other landlords as well as tenants. Okay. All right. And so my goal is to make sure that I'm answering questions, that the questions that I'm answering are clear, they're relevant, and that you are able to understand the information that's covered today. Is that all right? So if you are watching a replay, thank you so much. I do love to know where my viewers are tuned in from. And so if you wouldn't mind, let me know which platform you're watching on. I want to make sure that I greet you today. So today is all about Q&A. Ask Karissa, residential rental housing matters. That's what today is about. All right. So if you have questions, I encourage you to drop it in the comment section. But today I'm going to share the questions that have come in. And I'm so delighted that you are able to be part of the conversation and the discussion because in many cases it turns out to be a discussion. And so if you have a question, if I'm able to answer it, I want this to be a dialogue and not necessarily a monologue. So I do have quite a bit of information to cover today because I received lots of questions. And I'm going to do my best to get through them as quickly as possible. All right. And so here is the first question that I received. So I'm going to bring the questions that were emailed from last week, between last week and yesterday, all the emails that have come in. I'm going to share those with you on screen. And so if you have a question, if you have a comment, a remark, or observation, put it in the comment section for me. Okay. All right. And so I have someone who is an investor. They just purchased their first property. So congratulations to them. Woohoo! That's super exciting. They just purchased a 12-unit building. And so they are looking to fill those rental doors with potential Section 8 families or tenants. And so here is their question. They ask, well, Karissa, I'm a new landlord, first-time investor for affordable housing. So they've always rented. But this go around, they want to get into affordable housing space. So they asked the question, how does the Section 8 program work? Great question. Since I have over 20 plus years of housing experience, I've worked at multiple housing agencies, but the Section 8 program, the Section 8 what was formerly called Section 8, it's now the Housing Choice Voucher Program. It is a federally funded program. So the money are federal dollars. It comes from not local dollars, but But let me just also state that just depending on where that rental property is, there may be some local dollars. And so there are federal programs and then there are local programs. So when it comes to the federal government, okay, the federal government will give that housing agency funding, and that's paid monthly to landlords. It's called the housing assistance payment. So it's the HAP payment, right? But also there are local dollars that are allocated. So essentially the government will give the housing agency money to administer, meaning that the agency will calculate how much the family or the tenant can afford to pay. And usually they will pay up to 30%. In some jurisdictions, it's a stretch. Some housing authorities or housing agencies will allow tenants to pay 40% of their income. But the rule of thumb, on average, is about 30% of their income. And there is no income requirement to be in the Section 8 program for participants. Okay. So whether the tenant is employed, unemployed, work, doesn't work, is in college, old, young, doesn't matter what the age, what the income is. So that housing agency will look at the requirements in order for them to get housing subsidy. Okay. And so when they're deemed qualified, they will essentially get a voucher. They're issued a voucher, and a voucher is a substitute for money. So it is a protected class when it comes to fair housing laws. Okay. So the housing authority would say, for instance, in your case, you have 12 new doors and you want to rent those out specifically to participants in the Section 8 program. So in the program, those participants are issued a housing voucher. They usually will go to a briefing, or in many cases, they may attend an online briefing. It just depends on how the housing authority is conducting the briefing. But the family is issued a voucher, and the voucher it does not have a dollar amount. Okay, so if you ever look at a tenant's voucher, it will not tell you a dollar amount. It will tell you the bedroom size. So if it's a 1 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, a 3 bedroom, a 5, 6, 7 bedroom voucher, that would be on the voucher. It's going to state the person's name. It's going to indicate when that voucher expires. Okay, that's very important to know, because when you look at the voucher, you want to make sure that it has not expired. Sometimes tenants are not as knowledgeable about the program, and although they have a voucher, it's only good for when they are currently searching. Let me just park there for a second, because let's just say there's a participant who has been in a program for maybe 10 years, right? But maybe they haven't moved in 5 years. And so they give you a voucher, which is dated for 5 years ago. Well, unfortunately, you cannot accept that voucher. I would strongly recommend that you tell that potential tenant to go back to the housing agency, the housing authority, whoever issued the voucher, and provide them with an updated voucher. That's important, because if they don't have an updated voucher, they will not be able to move into your place. So you want to make sure that they have a valid voucher. Okay. So when they give you the voucher, the housing authority will give also paperwork that you and the tenant must sign, and those forms must be returned to the housing agency. After the housing agency receives your forms, they're going to look it over. They're going to make sure that the rent is reasonable. They're going to make sure that the rent is within the guidelines of what the program has already set. Okay. And if they approve your rent amount, they'll go ahead and they'll pass you off to the next phase, which is to conduct a housing inspection. The housing inspection is something that all landlords should be prepared for in advance. Okay. Before you submit your paperwork to the housing authority, make sure that that property is in move-in condition. That means it's clean, it's clear of debris, it's clear of clutter, it's clear of paint cans and old rags and your previous tenant or your previous or your belongings or whatever. You want to make sure that the property is in move-in condition, because you want to pass that inspection when the housing inspector comes out. And so essentially that's how the program works. The PHA, the Public Housing Authority, will pay a portion of the rent, or in many cases they may pay all the rent, but it just depends on what the tenant's income is. So the more money that tenant receives, the more they're going to pay in rent. Okay, so that's a great question. And today is all about Q&A. So if you have questions, please go ahead and throw it in the comment section and I will come to you shortly. All right, so here is your second question. What are some benefits of renting to Section 8 tenants? That's a great question. So I guess the best way for me to answer that is to say that when it comes to Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program participants, that's usually guaranteed money on time. You're going to get your money each month on time. Now, it just depends on the housing agency and but for the most part, the payments are on time. You receive it by a certain day each month. So usually it could be between the 1st and the 5th of the month. It depends on the agency, but you get that money guaranteed each month on time. Many housing authorities have transitioned to direct deposit, meaning that those payments are electronically sent. I like electronic payments better because you get it quicker. I know back in the day, way back in the day, when they used to mail out paper checks, and some agencies still do, but if you're in a jurisdiction that can send you your payment electronically, go ahead and do that because you can get it on time. And they usually have a portal for landlords to go on. You can see that your payment has been made. If you have multiple doors like you just purchased a new building, and again, congratulations to you, new investor for affordable housing. You can go online, you can check your statement, you can see how much money the housing authority has sent you. So the housing authority will send you your payment, and depending on if the tenant has a portion to pay, then the tenant will pay their portion, and you are responsible for collecting the tenant's rent if that's the procedure for your jurisdiction. I say it like that because some jurisdictions will have the tenants to pay the agency, and the agency pay the landlord all the money. And it just depends on the type of housing program that you're participating with. So find out what the guidelines are for your housing agency. So great question. And like I said, that's one of the biggest benefits. You get your money on time. Now, the only thing about it is that if you come into any type of issue with the tenant, the housing authority won't step in and take the place of you being the landlord. So in many cases, you will have to execute your lease. You'll still have to take the tenant to court if there are any like lease violations or anything like that. All right, next question. I'm coming to your comments. Next question here. What steps should I take if I need to evict a tenant? Great question. And so the same process that you would take for a tenant who's not in the Section 8 program. So usually that means you have to give the tenant some notice of violation, right? If it's a lease violation, non-payment of rent, it could be personal use and occupancy. It just depends on why you're taking the tenant to court. You have to give notice according to the laws in that particular jurisdiction. Okay, so you give the tenant notice that there's some sort of violation. You take them to court, and the court will ultimately decide if that tenant is going to be evicted, if you're going to get a judgment, if you're going to get a writ for that tenant to be put out of the rental property. So it's the same process as you would evict somebody who's not in the Section 8 program. All right, so let me come to your, hey, Jackie, thank you for tuning in. Hey, Kim. Hello, happy marvelous Monday, Ms. Gay. Thank you so much for tuning in. Jackie, you said, please address the importance of filling your renewal paperwork in a timely manner. Absolutely. I absolutely will address that. And so great point, Jackie. And so with that, in situations, so Jackie, I'm gonna go Section 8, then I'm gonna go non-Section 8 because I have a wide range of viewers who are watching in multiple jurisdictions. And so Jackie, so before I address this, so renewal paperwork, are you talking about the agency paperwork or lease renewal paperwork? All right, but let me just go Section 8. So when it comes to Section 8 participants, please make sure that, Jackie, can you just expound on that a little bit more so I'll know exactly what to cover? But for instance, with Section 8, those participants do have to recertify in order to remain in the program. That is a requirement. So recertification means that they are given paperwork. And I was looking to see if I have any, but I don't have any here. But they're given a recertification package. It could be physical package, it could be an online package. And so usually the housing agency will say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Section 8 participant, housing choice voucher participant, it's time to renew, right? So they have to give a report to the governing authority, the powers to be, whether it's HUD or whatever agency that's giving them money. They have to report to them that tenants are still in need of housing assistance. And so the tenants will be notified that it's time for them to recertify. It's time for them to let the agency know any updated income, if there are any changes in the household, have they had any kids, have they gotten married, has anybody moved out, is anybody moving in, are there any allowances or deductions that should be considered. All of those things are factored in at renewal, at recertification time. And so it's at that time, it's usually sent out, that letter is sent out 4 months in advance, at least 4 months in advance, should be. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but should be. So the housing authority will send letters out saying, hey, it's time for you to recertify housing choice voucher participant. You have to bring in all the documentation so that we can complete your recertification. And it's at that time where they will take a look at whatever is going on in a household. If there are any changes that are going to be made in the rent, it usually takes place at that time. Now, also, I just want to add this, and thank you, Jackie. When it's time for voucher participants to recertify, sometimes, depending on the jurisdiction, landlords are allowed to request an increase in their rent. Okay. And so that means that the agency, they would take a look at what is reasonable. So I would strongly recommend that you look at the rent comps in your particular area before requesting a rent increase. Here's why that's important. Some jurisdictions, not all. I know that DC recently changed. This is something that they did years ago. They re-implemented this policy. But in a jurisdiction where they are looking at the rent, they want to make sure that it is reasonable. If your rent, let's just say the rent is $3,000, right? For Washington, DC, let me just say Brightwood, DC. Okay. Rent is $3,000 and you ask for an increase. Let's say you ask for $1,000 increase, right? And so you ask for $4,000. Your rent is currently $3,000. So DC has recently gone through their revamping their rent reasonableness process, which is something that was long overdue. And so they heard the concerns of landlords, they heard the concerns of constituents and advocates and people complaining that they've not been able to get a rent increase for years. Okay. So DC said, hey, we're going to take a look at it. We're going to revamp our policy. We're going to make sure that it's fair across the board. We're going to make sure that it's affordable. And we're going to do this for all landlords. Okay. So they've taken their rents from off of their website, which is something that was there for many, many years. And so now landlords get to submit a rent increase. But if the rent in your jurisdiction has somehow decreased and you ask for a rent increase, they're going to bring your rent down to the amount that is reasonable. And so do your comps, do your research before you ask for a rent increase. What's going on, Fletcher? Thank you so much for tuning in. Sure, anything for you, Pastor Fletcher. All right, so let me go back to my questions. And so today is all about Q&A. All right, so here's the next question that came in about Section 8 tenants. Can Section 8 tenants be evicted, and what is the process? So I've already answered that. The process is the same. Whatever the eviction process is for a tenant who is not in the Section 8 program, you still have to follow that same process. And if you are not knowledgeable, I would strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you speak to a reputable landlord and tenant attorney. Here's why. I had a young lady who she was just getting into property management and she self-managed her property, but she also owns property in another area outside of DC. And so the laws where her other rental property is very different from DC. So she hand wrote a notice and put it on the tenant's door, told the tenants that they were being evicted. She didn't take them to court. She didn't use the required forms that are necessary in DC, because if not, the judge will kick that case out, even if the tenant is not paying. And in that situation, she had 3 tenants who were not paying because she was a new owner. They didn't know her. They said they were not dealing with her, and they had not paid their rent in months. And so if you have multiple tenants who's not paying rent, I mean, that could create a financial hardship. I felt really bad for her, but in any event, she delayed her process. And when she finally got to court, she didn't have her paperwork in order. She didn't have a business license. She didn't register the property. And so it just went really, really bad, really quickly for her. So please make sure that you understand the process first and foremost. Okay. All right. So let me come back to your true story. And stuff like that happens. So let me go to my next question. What can I do if my Section 8 tenant does not allow me in to make repairs? Great question. So number 1, here's what I strongly recommend. Look at your lease. Look at what's in the lease. Have you communicated with your landlord? Have you communicated with the tenant? So you want to give the tenant proper notice. Okay, I don't know if you had this conversation verbally with the tenant or you gave the tenant something in writing. First and foremost, give your tenant something in writing. Follow the laws. In some areas, it's 24 hours notice. In DC, it's 48 hour. Okay, 48 hours. So know what the laws are. DC has changed the laws. 48-hour notice in DC. Landlords, you got to give your tenants 48-hour notice. In some, it's 24. So anyway, communicate with the tenant in writing. Let them know, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we're coming out. We're making repairs. Okay. Don't just have a conversation over the phone. You want to document everything. Document. One of the things that I say so frequently is this: documentation beats conversation any day. Okay. So you want to document it. You want to also document your attempts that you're going out. And if your tenant is still not allowing you in to make those repairs, please immediately contact that housing agency. Let the housing specialist, the case manager, the caseworker know that you're trying to get in to make the repairs. The tenant is not cooperating. Here is why that's important. That's so urgently important, because if you don't make repairs and that tenant, or let's just say the housing agency comes out, they send a housing inspector out, the repairs are not completed, they may give you time. Usually they'll give you time to make repairs, but in some situations, they can stop your payment if repairs are not completed. So you don't want to count as a strike against you. And I get it. Listen, I've been in the industry for over 20 plus years. Okay. So nothing surprises me when it comes to things that happen between landlord and tenant in those relationships, right? But you don't want that to count as a strike against you, because if you're not able to make those repairs, the agency can stop your payment. And if the payment is stopped, the tenant is still in your rental property. So just because you're not getting the payment, the agency is not going to put the tenant out. So communicate, kind of take proactive steps. Get ahead of the curve, contact that housing agency. Hey, housing authority, I'm trying to get in to make repairs. My tenant is not cooperating at all. I've sent several notices. As a matter of fact, here are all the copies of the letters, the notices that we've sent to the tenant. You want to send that by way of email, because again, remember I said that documentation beats conversation any day. Okay. And I've seen tenants who emphatically just flat out lied and said, well, I contacted my landlord and they didn't come out to make repairs. I've been trying to contact them for over 5 months and not gotten a response yet. Listen, stuff happens, okay? But if you have it in writing, you can show that you have been trying to, in fact, get out and make those repairs. Okay, so that's a great question. All right, so let me go to the comment section here, and then I am going to come back. Hello, Lynette. Thank you for tuning in. Beautiful. Happy, marvelous Monday. I see your comment here. Okay. Woohoo. Good job. You got the new place. Awesome. Awesome sauce. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. So today is all about Q&A. So I'm going to answer all of your questions today. Let me go back to our questions that came in. All right. As an owner, what reports should my property manager provide me monthly? Great question. And so a few weeks ago, I did a segment. I talked about how a property manager stole money from tenants. So the property manager worked on behalf of, and represented the owner. So essentially, that property manager who stole money was stealing money from the tenants as well as the owner. All right. So great question. As an owner, you should be aware of reports that your property manager are providing. So I'm just going to cover some for the sake of time. And I hope that I'm able to get through all of your questions today, but you definitely want to make sure that you're getting your financial statement. Okay. This will document the property's income. It will let you know what the expenses are. You want to also get a rent roll that lets you know, based off of the tenants who currently live in your property, how much rent has been collected for that month. What is the rent balance status, right? And so that rent roll report will give you that information. You want to also get an occupancy report. That's important for you to know what percentage of your rental units are occupied. Are you 100% occupied? Are you 70% occupied? And so that occupancy report will share all that information. And there's some other reports that should be included, but those are the three top. I mean, there could be a maintenance report so that you'll know what maintenance repairs have been completed, if extermination has been completed. Have all of those reports sent to you monthly by your property manager. Okay. All right, so let me come to the comment section. You said, please pull your ledger. Absolutely. Good point. Good point. Thank you, Lynette. Going back to what reports should be provided to the owners. Definitely the ledger. That's a good point. Thanks, Lynette. All right, so next question here. I rent to a permanent supportive housing program. How do I prepare my rentals to pass inspections? Fletcher, are you still on? All right. So when it comes to permanent supportive housing, that's kind of similar to the Section 8 program. Now, let me just explain the difference between the two. So permanent supportive housing. So if you were on a little earlier, I shared how there are housing programs that are covered on a federal basis. So there are federal dollars that come in, and then there are local dollars that come in. And so usually the state or the local jurisdiction will give the housing agency money on behalf of tenants. So permanent supportive housing program, very similar to Section 8, right? The rules are pretty similar, but you want to make sure that you have a rental property that's clean, it's clear, it's ready to move in, it's in move-in condition, right? So I want you to think of it like this. There are going to be families, potentially little children, little babies. You don't know who's going to rent your place when you put it up for rent initially. But think of little children that will occupy your rental property. Okay. You want to make sure that it's safe, it's clean, it's decent, it's sanitary for little children. Don't just think about the mother. Okay. I want you to think about, you know what? They're going to be children. Is my place clean? Look under the cabinets. I did an inspection today. Did 2 inspections today. And at one of the rental properties, they did a great job at the property, but there were still some things that were left in like the cabinets and stuff like that. You want to make sure that all this stuff is cleared out. Another inspection I did, there was still a load of clothes in the washing machine that was left behind. And so when you open it, you can imagine the stench that came out. So you want to just check it. Check every room, wall to wall, door to door, floor to floor. Open all the doors. Check the oven. Did the previous tenant clean it? If not, please, if you're not doing this, please make sure that you have a representative that's doing that for you, or you have a cleaning company or a cleaning crew to go in and take care of it. But still make sure that all of those things are done. Okay. When you have participants, whether it's a participant or a market tenant, When you have people that's getting ready to rent your property, they should be able to just move right on in. Because here's the thing. Here is the danger that you could potentially run into when you are trying to rent your property and it's not move-in condition. So ideally, you want to sell that property to the tenant. They should be able to see themselves living in your rental property. And so if there is something that is a turnoff, you cannot remove that view, right? You can't remove what has been embedded in their mind. You can't make them unsee what has already been seen. Okay. And so if it's a dirty place, if it's not clean, it gives a negative, it just gives negative energy. It gives a negative vibe. And that tenant could potentially say, you know what? This is a shiesty landlord. They showing dirty units. They didn't even clean up. They had stuff all in the sink. They didn't even flush the toilet. It smelled like poop as soon as you open the door. And so sometimes those are just negative comments and that negative feedback that could potentially turn away one of your best potential tenants. So that's very important to make sure that that property is in moving condition. All right, so let me come to the comment section here. You said, heck no. All right. We have 4 apartments vacant in my building going on for 3 months now. To me, that's a problem. Absolutely. Because here's the thing. And Lynette, I know that you tune in often. You know, one of the things that I say so frequently is this: bricks and mortar don't pay rent. Vacant rental units, that's bad for business because it's not putting money in the bank. And so if you treat your business like a business, it will pay you like a business. So please, ma'am, please, sir, as a landlord, as a property manager, as a property owner, you want to look to get and to keep those rental properties clear. All right. All right. So Lynette, you said, thank God I did an email of stuff that was wrong in my kitchen, from the cabinets and countertops to the rugs. So when I do my walkthrough, you can't say it was because of me. They would never repair it. Both properties wouldn't fix it. So my email is about 6 to 8 pages. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, 6 to 8 old. But yeah, that's a good point. And thank you for that. Always document everything. Document. Because if it's in writing, it can't be disputed. I mean, sometimes people still will try to dispute it, but you also want to make sure that you cover your assets. Okay. Tenants as well as landlords. Okay. You said months old. So your email is about 6 to 8 months old. Got it. All right. So another question here. Did I have another question? Okay, so that looks like that's it for my questions that came in. And so today was all about Q&A. Ask me any questions pertaining to landlord and tenant related housing matters. I know that sometimes some of you have questions that I'm not able to cover online because of the time frame, but if there's ever a live that I do, and again, this is what I do each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please make sure that you tune in. And by way of announcement, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, because that's how you'll know when I'm live and online. Sometimes I'm not on Facebook. Sometimes I'm not on LinkedIn, and I'm not on Twitter. I might only be live on YouTube. So subscribe to that YouTube channel. But each and every Monday, I bring a different topic. And if I am not online, if you have a question, if there's ever a time that I'm covering a topic and I may not be able to address your concerns, please email me. Let me give you my email address, because I want to make sure that you can find me when you need me. All right, so let me share my email address. It is at the bottom of the screen. It's info@landlordlife.com. That's my email address. Please make sure that you tune in weekly. Okay, please like, please tag, and please share this information if this was helpful for you today. And again, thank you so much. I shared last week that I am I'm kicking off a two things. So an inspection workshop, which will be in the DC metropolitan area. And I know that some of you have already emailed me. So I did already add you guys to that wait list so that you'll be the first to know the exact date and the time. But for more information, please make sure that you email me. I want to make sure that I get you that information. So it is the in-person inspection workshop. It will be in person. My team and I, we will be delivering information, your material in person. It's a one-day workshop. Also, I'm launching an online landlord boot camp, and I promise it will be action packed. And so for more information, please stay tuned. Here's my email address. Please tune in each and every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. So I do appreciate you tuning in. My time is up. I thank you for yours. I like that lady in red. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Love you. Mwah. All right. So today was all about Q&A. I answered questions. There were questions that came in about the Section 8 program, how to rent to the participants in the program, the benefits of renting to the program. I answered questions about housing inspections, how to prepare. I shared information if you have participants in the voucher program or any housing program, and especially if they have to recertify or renew their housing assistance, the importance of doing it on time. And also, let me just add to that. Here's another add to that question or that comment that came in. If ever your tenant is delayed in getting that housing agency, the documentation that are needed, maybe offer assistance. See if you can step in. I've had landlords that say, well, Karissa, I don't know what to do. I said, well, ask your tenant if they wouldn't mind you helping them to go down to the agency, scan or copy their documents so they can get it into the agency. Because if not, if they don't recertify, if they're not renewed, they could potentially lose their housing assistance. And so if they lose their housing assistance, you could potentially lose your housing payment. All right. So just kind of be proactive in all of these matters. I answered the question of how to handle eviction and what that process looks like. All right. And so you want to treat it the same, the way that you would with a tenant who's not in the Section 8 program. Okay. You can't discriminate. So that's what I covered today. Thank you for all of your questions. Thank you for all of your comments, your remarks, your observations. And again, my time is up. I thank you for yours. I look forward to seeing all of you next week. Bring a friend, bring a loved one, send this information to tenants and landlords, because I promise next week is going to be juicy. So I'm going to say bye for now.